Elara's journey had been a descent into a world she hadn't known she craved. The city, with its frantic pulse and ceaseless hum, had receded behind her like a forgotten dream. Now the winding road was flanked by ancient oaks, their branches heavy with emerald moss, their leaves a symphony of rustling whispers. Rain, a soft persistent curtain, veiled the already muted landscape in shades of charcoal and silver. She gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles faintly white, a tremor of anticipation running beneath her skin. This was it. Whis. The name, when she'd first heard it, had resonated with something primal within her. Not a place exactly, but a feeling. A promise of quietude, of untold stories etched into old wood and stone. The invitation had been unexpected, a solitary email from an obscure artist's retreat, nestled deep within the redwood coast. She'd applied on a whim, feeling the encroaching weight of her own creative stagnation, and been accepted with a brevity that bordered on mysterious. Finally, the gravel path. It crunched under her tires, a satisfying sound of arrival. Through a break in the trees, the lodge revealed itself. Not grand, but impossibly elegant, as if it had grown organically from the very earth it stood upon. Dark timber, slate roof shimmering with rain, and a wrap-around porch that beckoned with the promise of long evenings spent watching the mist roll in. Smoke curled lazily from a stone chimney, a beacon of warmth against the chill of the late autumn afternoon. As she parked her car, the engine's purr died, leaving only the soft drumming of rain on the roof and the distant sigh of the ocean. A profound silence enveloped her, a hush that seemed to seep into her bones, calming the frantic flutter she hadn't realized her heart possessed. She took a deep breath, inhaling the damp, earthy scent of pine and redwood. A fragrance both wild and comforting. Stepping out, the air was cool against her cheeks, carrying with it the faint, intoxicating aroma of wood smoke and something else. Something subtle and spicy, like old leather and distant pipe tobacco. She retrieved her bag, a single canvas duffel, and approached the heavy oak door. Before her knuckles could even graze the polished wood, it swung inward. He stood framed in the doorway, a silhouette against the warm glow of the interior. Tall, effortlessly so, with broad shoulders that filled the space. His hair was dark, almost black, falling in a casual wave across his forehead. Even in the dim light, she could sense the keen intelligence in his eyes, a depth that seemed to see right through the protective layers she usually wore. Elara. His voice was a low murmur, a sound like gravel rolling over river stones. Smooth, deep, and utterly captivating. It held a trace of something ancient, perhaps, or simply profoundly grounded. It was the first Whis she truly heard. She nodded, a little breathless, her carefully constructed composure threatening to fray at the edges. Yes, and you must be Kale? A slow smile, subtle but potent, curved his lips. It didn't quite reach his eyes, which remained watchful, assessing. The one and only. Welcome to Whis, Elara. He stepped aside, gesturing for her to enter. The interior was a revelation. High vaulted ceilings of exposed timber, a massive stone fireplace dominating one wall, a fire already roaring, casting dancing shadows. The air was thick with the scent of burning cedar, old books, and something sweet, like spiced cider. Rich, worn leather armchairs were scattered artfully, inviting repose. Sunlight, broken and diffused by the rain-streaked windows, painted the polished floorboards with an ethereal glow. It's incredible, she managed, her gaze sweeping across the room, taking in the overflowing bookshelves that lined every available wall, the heavy Persian rugs, the collection of curious artifacts, a polished piece of driftwood, a set of ancient navigational tools, a faded tapestry. We try to foster a certain atmosphere, Kale said, his voice closer now, making the fine hairs on her arms prickle. She turned to face him, and this time, the light caught his eyes. They were the color of deep moss, flecked with gold, and they held an unnerving intensity. He wore a dark, fitted sweater that emphasized the breadth of his chest, and practical, dark trousers. No pretense, just a quiet, powerful presence. You've captured it perfectly, Elara replied, feeling a warmth spread through her, partly from the fire, partly from his proximity. I had no idea what to expect, really. The website was sparse. He chuckled, a soft, rich sound. Intentional. We find the right people gravitate here naturally. Those who seek, truly seek, don't need much convincing. His gaze lingered on hers for a beat too long, and a blush unwelcome and surprising crept up her neck. Well, I certainly saw it, she said, trying to inject a lightness she didn't quite feel. My canvases have been stubbornly blank for months. A common affliction, Cale replied, his eyes finally crinkling at the corners. Perhaps Whis will offer the antidote. Let me show you to your room. He picked up her duffel bag with an ease that made it seem feather-light, and led her down a wide carpeted hallway. Each step was cushioned, the only sound the soft padding of their feet. Art in various forms adorned the walls. Landscapes, abstracts, sculptures nestled in alcoves. It wasn't a gallery, but a living collection, each piece contributing to the lodge's unique narrative. Her room was at the very end of the hall, overlooking a dense tangle of trees that sloped down towards what she imagined was the ocean. The rain had momentarily ceased, and a sliver of pale, watery light illuminated the room. It was simple, yet luxurious. A king-sized bed with crisp white linens and a thick, inviting duvet. A small writing desk by the window, a comfortable armchair, and another, smaller fireplace, already laid with kindling. "Make yourself at home," Cale said, placing her bag gently on a luggage rack. "Dinner is at 7. Feel free to explore before then. The library is through the main hall, and there's a small studio space downstairs if you find inspiration strikes." "Thank you," Elara said, turning to him. He was still standing there, hands tucked casually into his pockets, his gaze sweeping over the room, then back to her. The air between them was suddenly charged, a silent hum of unspoken things. "Is there anything you need?" he asked, his voice softer now, almost a true whisper. Her eyes met his, and for a fleeting moment, she felt a profound sense of recognition, as if she had known him in another life, or perhaps in a dream. "No," she breathed a little too quickly. "Everything is perfect." He nodded, a slight curve to his lips. "Good, then I'll leave you to settle in." With another lingering look, he turned and left, closing the door softly behind him. Elara stood in the middle of the room, listening to the fading echo of his footsteps. Her heart was thrumming, a strange mix of excitement and trepidation. She walked to the window, gazing out at the ancient forest, its branches dripping with rain. The world outside felt wild and untamed, much like the unexpected surge of feeling Cale's presence had ignited within her. She unpacked slowly, her mind replaying their brief encounter. His eyes, the depth of his voice, the way he'd looked at her. It wasn't just hospitality, it was something more. A current, subtle but undeniable, had flowed between them. After a quick shower, the warm water soothing her travel-weary muscles, she changed into a soft forest green dress that felt appropriate for the setting. It was simple, elegant, and comfortable, just the right balance of casual and considered. The reflection in the mirror showed a woman whose eyes held a new spark, a hint of curiosity and burgeoning desire. Downstairs the lodge hummed with a quiet energy. The fire in the great room crackled merrily, and the scent of a savory stew now mingled with the wood smoke. She found Cale in the dining room, a long polished table set for a single guest. A bottle of deep red wine stood uncorked, breathing. "Perfect timing," he said, pulling out a chair for her. His movements were fluid, graceful. He had changed into a dark, crisp shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms, and the change, though subtle, somehow amplified his allure. "It smells wonderful," she said, taking her seat. The candlelight flickered, casting a warm glow on his face, highlighting the strong line of his jaw and the subtle stubble that suggested a ruggedness beneath his refined exterior. He poured her a glass of wine, the ruby liquid gleaming in the candlelight. "Venison stew with foraged mushrooms, all local of course." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the clinking of silverware and the gentle patter of rain returning against the windows. The stew was rich and flavorful, warming her from the inside out. Ilara felt herself relaxing, the tension of the journey and the initial meeting slowly dissipating, replaced by a deep sense of contentment. "Tell me about your art," Cale prompted, leaning back slightly, his eyes holding hers across the table. She hesitated, not used to discussing her work with such directness, especially with someone who seemed to possess such an astute gaze. I paint landscapes mostly, but lately it's been portraits, or the attempt at them anyway, capturing the essence, not just the likeness." "And what essence are you trying to capture here at Whis?" he asked, his voice a low, almost hypnotic rumble. Ilara looked around the room, then back at him. "Atmosphere, I suppose. The way the light falls, the way the silence hums, the feeling of being completely unburdened." She paused, then added, "And perhaps the people who inhabit it." Her gaze flickered to his, and a silent understanding passed between them. He smiled, a slow, knowing smile that softened the intensity of his eyes. "I look forward to seeing what emerges on your canvas. We have a rather rich history here, if you're interested in tales." "I'm always interested in tales," she confessed, feeling a lightness she hadn't experienced in months. They talked for hours, long after the plates had been cleared. Cale spoke of the lodge's history, of the eccentric artists and writers who had found sanctuary within its walls, of the deep connection the land held. He spoke with a quiet passion that drew her in, revealing glimpses of his own complex nature. He was not just a host, he was a guardian, a storyteller, a man deeply attuned to the rhythms of Whis. Ilara found herself captivated, not just by his words, but by the subtle shifts in his expression, the way his hands moved when he spoke, the occasional glint in his moss-green eyes. There was a profound stillness about him, a centeredness that was both calming and incredibly alluring. As the evening deepened, the conversation drifted to more personal subjects. She found herself sharing details about her creative struggles, her longing for something more profound in her art, even a little about the quiet ache of loneliness that had settled in her life. Cale listened with an attentiveness that was rare, his gaze unwavering, making her feel seen in a way she hadn't been in a long time. "You have a deep well of emotion, Ilara," he observed, his voice barely above a whisper, after she'd recounted a particularly frustrating period of artistic block. "Sometimes, the well needs to be stirred, not just drawn from." Her breath hitched. "And how does one stir it?" His eyes held hers, a silent challenge, a promise. "By living fully, by allowing oneself to feel everything that passes through, the joy, the sorrow, the passion, the longing." The word hung in the air between them, heavy and resonant. Longing. It was a feeling she had suppressed, a hunger she had tried to ignore. But now, in the warmth of the firelight, under his steady gaze, it felt undeniable. He rose from the table, and for a moment, she thought the spell might break. But he simply walked to the fireplace, retrieved a fresh log, and added it to the dying embers. The flames leaped higher, casting a deeper glow on his strong profile. "Would you like another glass of wine?" he asked, turning back to her. She shook her head, feeling a pleasant warmth spreading through her veins, a comfortable haze. "No, thank you. I think I'm good." She stood up, feeling a slight wobble from the wine and the sheer emotional intensity of the evening. "Perhaps a walk then," he suggested, gesturing towards the glass-paned door that led to the porch. "The rain has stopped, and the air is remarkably clear." A walk. In the dark. With him. Her heart gave a sudden leap. "I'd like that very much." He led the way, opening the heavy door. The cool night air, clean and invigorating, embraced her. The scent of damp earth and pine was even stronger out here, mingled with the salty tang of the distant ocean. Above them the clouds had parted, revealing a sky ablaze with stars, millions of pinpricks of light against the inky blackness. The porch wrapped around the entire lodge, offering panoramic views. They walked in silence for a few moments, side by side, their shoulders occasionally brushing. The contact was electric, a small spark that sent shivers down her spine. "It's breathtaking," Elara whispered, tilting her head back to gaze at the cosmos. "It is," Cale agreed, his voice a low rumble beside her. She felt his gaze on her, warm and steady. They stopped at a railing, leaning against the cool wood. Below them the forest stretched out, a dark, murmuring presence. The only sounds were the distant crash of waves and the soft, almost imperceptible rustle of the leaves. The constant, gentle whis of the place. "Do you ever feel overwhelmed by it all?" Elara asked, her voice barely audible. "By the beauty? The vastness?" "Only in the most exquisite way," he replied, his voice closer now, his breath warm on her ear. He had leaned in, his body a solid, comforting presence beside her. "It's a reminder of our place, small perhaps, but deeply connected." He turned to face her, his hand reaching out, not quite touching her, but hovering inches from her arm. She felt the heat radiating from him, the subtle current of energy that seemed to flow between them. Her breath hitched again, her heart hammering against her ribs. His eyes, dark pools reflecting the starlight, searched hers. The air thickened, charged with unspoken desire. Every fiber of her being was acutely aware of him. The scent of his skin, the warmth of his body, the intensity of his gaze. "Elara," he murmured, her name a soft caress on his lips. His thumb brushed lightly against the skin of her forearm, a feather-light touch that nonetheless sent a jolt through her. She instinctively leaned into the touch, her eyelids fluttering closed for a moment, savoring the exquisite sensation. Her own longing, long dormant, flared to life. A hungry flame in her core. She wanted him to touch her more, to pull her closer, to erase the small distance that still separated them. When she opened her eyes, his face was very close. Close enough for her to see the tiny flecks of gold in his eyes, close enough to feel the warmth of his breath on her cheek. The world narrowed to just the two of them, suspended under the vast, star-strewn sky. "Whis," he said again, his voice barely a breath, a secret shared only between them. He wasn't naming the lodge, he was naming the feeling, the hushed intimacy, the burgeoning desire. His hand moved from her forearm, slowly, deliberately, up to her jawline. His thumb traced the curve of her cheekbone, his touch gentle, yet possessive. Her skin tingled where he touched her, sending waves of warmth through her. She felt herself leaning into his palm, a silent plea for more. "You have a light about you, Elara," he whispered, his voice rough with an emotion she couldn't quite decipher, but which resonated deep within her. A quiet fire. Her lips parted slightly, a soft sigh escaping her. She felt a magnetic pull towards him, an irresistible force drawing her in. Her gaze dropped to his mouth, the full, sensual curve of his lips, and a dizzying anticipation swirled within her. He lowered his head slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. But she had no desire to. Her eyes closed again, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She felt the soft brush of his breath on her lips, the subtle scent of him. Wood smoke, earth, and something uniquely Cale. Then his lips were on hers. Not a demanding kiss, but a soft, lingering press. A question, an invitation. It was tender, tentative, yet it held an immense depth of emotion. It was the first true whis of their shared story. Her own lips parted in welcome. A silent invitation for him to deepen the kiss. His hand tightened subtly on her jaw, his other arm encircling her waist, drawing her gently but firmly against him. Her body molded against his, a perfect fit. The kiss deepened, becoming more insistent, more passionate. His tongue traced the seam of her lips, and she opened for him, allowing him access. It was a kiss that promised everything and nothing, a swirling vortex of sensation and emotion. His taste was intoxicating, wine, and something else, something uniquely masculine and compelling. Her hands, almost unconsciously, found their way to his chest, gripping the soft fabric of his shirt. The steady beat of his heart against her palms was a grounding rhythm in the midst of the soaring passion. He pulled back slightly, just enough for their foreheads to touch, their breaths mingling in the cool night air. His eyes, dark and intense, searched hers, filled with a raw, unspoken emotion. "Elara," he breathed, his voice a low, guttural sound that vibrated through her. She could only gaze back at him, lost in the depths of his eyes, her own heart overflowing with a myriad of feelings, desire, wonder, a profound sense of coming home. This place, this man, it was all so new, yet so utterly familiar. The whispers had led her here, and now they were just beginning to speak. He kissed her again, a deeper, more consuming kiss this time, his lips moving with a slow, deliberate rhythm that stole her breath away. His hands roamed her back, pulling her even closer, until there was no space left between them. She felt the hard planes of his chest, the warmth of his body, the undeniable strength of him. Her fingers tangled in his dark hair, pulling him closer still, wanting to lose herself completely in the intoxicating embrace. The stars above seemed to spin, the forest murmured its ancient secrets, and the distant ocean roared its approval. Here, on the edge of the world, under the vast, indifferent sky, something profound had awakened. The whispers had found their voice, and they were speaking directly to her soul. She felt a sense of destiny, a thrilling, terrifying certainty that her life had irrevocably changed the moment she stepped onto this path, the moment she heard the name Whis. He pulled away again, slowly, reluctantly, his thumb stroking her lower lip. His eyes were dark with desire, mirroring her own. "We should. It's late," he murmured, his voice thick. Elara could only nod, her mind a beautiful haze, her body thrumming with unfulfilled longing. The kiss had been a revelation, a promise of depths yet to be explored. He took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers, and led her back inside, the warmth of his touch a searing brand against her skin. The fire in the great room had dwindled to embers, casting a soft orange glow. The lodge was silent, save for the crackling of the dying fire and the frantic beat of her own heart. He walked her to her door, stopping just outside. He lifted their joined hands, bringing her knuckles to his lips for a soft, lingering kiss. His eyes never left hers. "Sleep well, Elara," he whispered, his voice a balm and a torment. "Dream of Whis." She nodded, unable to speak, her throat tight with emotion. She watched him turn and walk away, his silhouette disappearing down the darkened hall. Only when she heard the soft click of his own door closing did she finally step into her room, closing her door behind her. She leaned against the wood, her eyes closed, her body trembling with a delicious ache. The scent of him still clung to her, a heady mix of pine, wood smoke, and kale. The memory of his lips on hers, the warmth of his body against hers, played on an endless loop in her mind. She walked to the window, gazing out at the star-dusted night. The whispers of the forest seemed louder now, no longer just the rustling of leaves, but a chorus of secrets, of desires, of promises. Her artistic block felt like a distant memory, replaced by a vibrant surge of inspiration, a kaleidoscope of colors and sensations. She climbed into bed, the crisp white sheets feeling cool against her heated skin. But sleep felt a long way off. Her mind was alight with Kale, with the lodge, with the profound, unexpected connection that had ignited between them. The longing was still there, a hungry ember, but now it was tinged with hope, with the thrilling anticipation of what tomorrow might bring. The whispers were no longer just a sound. They were feeling, a destiny, a burgeoning story. And she was utterly, irrevocably caught in their enchanting spell. The morning light filtered through the thick pines outside her window, painted the rough-hewn walls of her room in stripes of gold and shadow. Elara stirred, a soft groan escaping her lips as she stretched, her muscles protesting the unaccustomed tension of the previous night. Yet it wasn't discomfort that dominated her senses, but a profound, almost dizzying afterglow. "Kale, Dari-chan." His name was a silent hum beneath her skin, a warmth that had nothing to do with the sun. She opened her eyes, finding the ceiling beams a familiar comfort. The white sheets, cool against her skin just hours ago, now held the ghost of her own heat, a subtle testament to the fiery thoughts that had kept her restless. Every nerve ending felt alive, exquisitely sensitive, as if the air itself crackled with potential. She remembered the scent of him, pine and something uniquely masculine, earthy and clean. His hands, the way they'd barely grazed her, yet left an indelible impression. The intensity in his eyes, a depth that promised untold stories and untamed passions. Getting out of bed felt like stepping into a new world, a world seen through a newly awakened lens. The rustic charm of her room, once merely pleasant, now felt imbued with a deeper significance, a part of the lodge's ancient welcoming embrace. She dressed slowly, choosing a soft, moss-green tunic and dark leggings, clothes that felt both comfortable and subtly flattering. Her reflection in the small mirror above the dresser seemed different. Her eyes held a new spark, her lips a faint, unconscious curve. She looked expectant. The scent of brewing coffee and something savory, bacon perhaps, wafted up from downstairs, drawing her like a siren's call. As she descended the grand staircase, the lodge began to wake around her. A fire crackled merrily in the great stone hearth, chasing away the morning chill. A few guests were already gathered in the dining area, their voices a low murmur. But her gaze, as if guided by an invisible thread, went straight to him. Cale stood by the large bay window, a mug cupped in his hands, staring out at the mist-shrouded forest. He wore a dark, form-fitting Henley that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, and worn jeans that clung to his powerful thighs. His dark hair, still slightly damp from a shower, caught the light in streaks of obsidian. He turned, as if sensing her presence, and his eyes, those captivating pools of forest green, met hers across the room. A jolt, warm and electric, passed between them. It was more potent than any spoken greeting. His lips tilted in a slow, knowing smile, a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes and sent a shiver down her spine. He didn't move towards her, nor did she rush to him. They simply held each other's gaze, a silent conversation unfolding in the space between them. A promise. A shared secret. The whispers of the lodge seemed to swell, enveloping them in their invisible embrace. "Good morning, Alara," he said, his voice a low rumble that reached her even from across the room, carrying the same warmth as the fire. "Good morning, Cale," she replied, her voice a little breathier than she intended. She felt a blush creep up her neck, but she didn't look away. This was too important to break eye contact. He gestured towards the spread on the long communal table. "Breakfast is ready. I hope you slept well." The question was innocent enough, but the glint in his eyes suggested he knew exactly how well or not she had slept. She managed a small smile. Surprisingly well, given the circumstances. She saw his smile deepen, a flicker of amusement in his gaze. She moved towards the table, filling a plate with a selection of fresh fruit, warm pastries, and a slice of thick-cut bacon. Cale joined her, not at the table, but leaning against the doorframe of the dining room, watching her. His presence was a palpable heat, a constant awareness. "The lodge has a way of settling the soul, doesn't it?" he mused, his voice soft, for her ears alone. "Even when the mind is otherwise occupied." She met his gaze again, a playful challenge in her own. "Perhaps it's not the lodge, but its keeper who has that effect." He chuckled, a rich, deep sound that resonated in her chest. "Careful, Alara. Such flattery might convince me to keep you here indefinitely." "Is that an offer, Cale?" she asked, her heart quickening. His eyes narrowed slightly, a thoughtful, almost possessive look. "It could be. For the right person." The air thickened, charged with unspoken possibility. They ate breakfast with a handful of other guests, making polite conversation, but Alara felt Cale's presence like a second skin. Every time their eyes met, every accidental brush of his hand as they reached for the coffee pot sent a delicious frisson through her. The anticipation was a living thing, humming beneath the surface of their casual interactions. After breakfast, Cale found her by the hearth, sipping a second cup of coffee. "The mist is clearing," he said, indicating the brightening sky outside the window. "Would you like to see more of the land? There's a path that leads to a hidden waterfall, not far from here. The whispers are particularly strong there." Her heart leaped. "I'd love that, Cale." "Good," he said, his smile warm and genuine. "Meet me by the main entrance in 15 minutes. Wear something sturdy for walking." The walk through the forest was everything she'd imagined and more. The air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of pine needles, damp earth, and distant wood smoke. Sunlight dappled through the canopy of ancient trees, casting shifting patterns on the moss-covered ground. Cale led the way, his stride long and confident, moving with an effortless grace that spoke of a deep familiarity with the wilderness. He pointed out different trees, identified bird calls, and shared snippets of local lore, his voice a soothing rhythm against the backdrop of nature. They spoke of their lives too, delving deeper than polite pleasantries. Ilara found herself sharing details of her work, her passions, the quiet yearning she'd felt for something more, something authentic, that had led her to this remote lodge. Cale listened intently, his gaze unwavering, making her feel utterly seen, utterly understood. "It's why I came here," he confessed, gesturing to the sprawling forest around them. "To escape the noise, to find the truth in the quiet." He paused, looking at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "And perhaps, to wait for what the whispers had promised." "And what did they promise, Cale?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. He smiled, a hint of ancient mystery in his eyes. "A connection, a spark, something that could set the world alight." The path grew steeper, winding alongside a rushing stream, whose music grew louder with every step. Soon they emerged into a small, secluded clearing. Before them, a magnificent waterfall cascaded down a sheer rock face, its waters churning into a crystal-clear pool below. The spray kissed the air, leaving a fine mist that shimmered with rainbows in the sunlight. The sound was a symphony, powerful and elemental. "It's breathtaking," Ilara breathed, awestruck. "It is," Cale agreed, his eyes on her, not the waterfall. "But not as breathtaking as you, Ilara, standing here in its light." Her cheeks flushed. The compliment, delivered with such sincerity, went straight to her heart. She felt a powerful pull towards him, an almost irresistible urge to close the small distance between them. The whispers here were indeed stronger, a chorus of ancient voices urging them closer. He reached out, his hand gently cupping her elbow as they navigated a slippery patch of moss. The contact was brief, yet it ignited a spark that coursed through her veins. His touch was warm, firm, reassuring. When they reached a smooth, sun-warmed rock by the pool, they sat down close enough that their thighs brushed. The air around them thrummed with unspoken words, with desires held just beneath the surface. They talked for hours by the waterfall, sharing stories, dreams, and vulnerabilities. Ilara found herself completely open with Cale, feeling an unprecedented level of trust and intimacy. He spoke of the lodge, not just as a business, but as a living entity, a legacy passed down through generations, and of his deep connection to the land and its spirits. He revealed a quiet intensity, a thoughtful depth that went beyond his rugged exterior. As the afternoon sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, they began their walk back. The forest was imbued with a new magic, the air cooler, the shadows longer. The silence between them was no longer one of anticipation, but of comfortable intimacy, a shared understanding that had deepened profoundly. Back at the lodge, Cale led her to a secluded corner of the great room, by a smaller, more intimate fireplace. "Dinner will be served shortly," he said, his voice softer now, laced with a new urgency. "But I wanted a moment, just us, before the evening begins." He poured them each a glass of amber liquid. A fine whiskey, she guessed, from its rich aroma. He handed her a glass, their fingers brushing again, sending a familiar jolt. He settled into the armchair opposite her, stretching his long legs towards the fire, his gaze never leaving hers. "Ilara," he began, his voice dropping to a near whisper, What we felt last night, what we felt today, it's not something I take lightly. The whispers have been silent for a long time, but with you they sing. She took a sip of the whiskey, the warmth spreading through her chest, mirroring the warmth Cale ignited. I feel it too, Cale. It's unlike anything I've ever experienced. And what do you want to do with it? He asked, his eyes dark and intense, searching hers. This connection, this destiny the lodge seems to have woven for us. Her heart pounded, a frantic drum beat against her ribs. This was it. The moment of truth. She could shy away, retreat to the safety of her room, or she could lean into the exhilarating, terrifying unknown. The whispers urged her forward. I want to explore it, Cale, she confessed, her voice barely audible. Every facet of it. I want to know where it leads. A slow smile spread across his face. A smile of profound relief and simmering desire. He rose from his chair, moving with a predator's grace, and knelt before her, taking her hands in his. His touch was firm yet tender, sending waves of heat through her. Then let's explore it, Alara, he murmured, his thumbs stroking the sensitive skin of her palms. Let's listen to the whispers, and let them guide us. Dinner was a blur of exquisite food and wine, punctuated by Cale's intense gaze across the table. They spoke little. Their conversation carried more by glances, by knowing smiles, by the palpable energy that arced between them. The other guests seemed distant, their chatter a soft background hum, as Alara and Cale existed in their own private world. As the evening wore on, the lodge grew quieter. Guests retired to their rooms, leaving Cale and Alara alone by the dying embers of the main hearth. The air was thick with anticipation, heavy with unspoken desires. The whispers were no longer a gentle hum. They were a fervent chant, echoing the pounding of Alara's heart. Cale rose, extending a hand to her. Come, he said, his voice a low, gravelly invitation. Let's go somewhere the whispers can truly be heard. She took his hand without hesitation, her fingers intertwining with his. A perfect fit. His touch was electric, sending shivers through her entire body. He led her not to her room, nor to his, but to a small private sitting room she hadn't noticed before, tucked away in a quiet corner of the lodge. A fire was already laid in its stone fireplace, casting a warm, flickering glow on the plush rug and deep, comfortable armchairs. A single large window overlooked the dark, whispering forest. He closed the door behind them, the soft click echoing in the sudden quiet. The world outside ceased to exist. Here, in this intimate space, there was only the firelight, the scent of pine and burning wood, and the profound, intoxicating presence of Cale. He turned to her, his gaze sweeping over her face, lingering on her lips, her eyes, her flushed cheeks. The desire in his eyes was raw, untamed, yet softened by a tenderness that made her heart ache. Alara, he breathed, his voice a rough caress. He didn't move towards her, but the intensity of his gaze pulled her, drew her in, until she was standing inches from him. The heat of his body radiated towards her. A silent promise. Cale, she whispered back, her voice barely there. Every nerve ending in her body was alight, humming with a longing that was both exquisite and agonizing. He lifted a hand, slowly, deliberately, and cupped her cheek. His palm was warm, slightly rough, and utterly intoxicating. His thumb stroked gently across her skin, sending a wave of sensation through her. Her eyes fluttered closed for a moment, savoring the feeling. You are even more beautiful than the whispers foretold, he murmured, his voice husky, close now. His other hand found her waist, drawing her gently, irrevocably closer. Their bodies touched, a soft, yielding embrace that ignited an inferno. Her hands found their way to his chest, feeling the solid warmth of his muscles beneath the soft fabric of his Henley. The scent of him, that intoxicating mix of pine, earth, and pure Cale, filled her senses, making her dizzy with desire. His head lowered, slowly, giving her ample time to pull away, to protest. But there was no protest in her, only a desperate yearning for his touch, for his kiss. Her lips parted slightly, an unspoken invitation. Then his mouth was on hers. It was not a gentle kiss, not tentative. It was a kiss of profound hunger, of long-held anticipation, acclaiming. His lips were firm, warm, and utterly intoxicating. He tasted of whiskey and fire and something wild and elemental. She responded instantly, her own hunger rising to meet his, a primal force she hadn't known she possessed. His arms wrapped tightly around her waist, pulling her flush against his body, leaving no space between them. She could feel the hard planes of his chest, the strength of his thighs, the undeniable proof of his desire pressing against her. A soft moan escaped her lips, lost in the depths of their kiss. Her fingers tangled in his dark hair, pulling him closer, deepening the kiss. Her body arched into his, a silent plea for more. His tongue met hers, exploring, caressing, igniting every nerve ending in her mouth. She kissed him back with a ferocity that surprised even herself, pouring all her pent-up longing, all her burgeoning love, into the embrace. He broke the kiss reluctantly, his forehead resting against hers, both of them breathing heavily. His eyes, dark with passion, burned into hers. "Elara," he whispered, his voice ragged with emotion. "You feel like home." Tears pricked at her eyes, a rush of overwhelming emotion. "And you, Kale," she whispered back, her voice trembling. "You feel like destiny." He kissed her again, softer this time, a tender reassurance before the passion flared anew. His hands moved, tracing a path along her spine, up to her shoulders, then down, slowly, deliberately, over her hips. Each touch was a spark, igniting new fires within her. She felt the warmth spread through her, a delicious languor that melted her bones. His touch was reverent, yet possessive, a potent combination that made her shiver with pleasure. He lifted her effortlessly, holding her against him as he moved towards the plush rug before the fire. He lowered her gently to the soft wool, never breaking eye contact, never letting go of her hand. Then he knelt beside her, his gaze still fixed on hers, a silent question in his eyes. She answered with her own gaze, a fervent invitation, a complete surrender. He reached out, his fingers fumbling slightly with the buttons of her tunic. His touch was light, feather soft, yet utterly devastating. As each button came undone, revealing a sliver of skin, a gasp escaped her lips. The air was cool against her heated skin, a tantalizing contrast. When the tunic was open, he pushed it gently from her shoulders, letting it fall away. She wore a simple lace camisole beneath, and his eyes lingered there, on the delicate lace, on the gentle swell of her breasts. His gaze alone was a caress, making her nipples tighten in exquisite anticipation. "You are exquisite, Elara," he murmured, his voice thick with desire. He reached out, his fingertips barely brushing the lace, sending a shiver through her. "May I?" She nodded, unable to speak, her breath caught in her throat. His fingers, surprisingly deft, unfastened the delicate clasp of her camisole, and it too slid away, pooling around her waist. She lay before him, bare from the waist up, vulnerable and utterly exposed in the warm firelight. A wave of shyness washed over her, but it was quickly eclipsed by the fierce, exhilarating desire in Kale's eyes. He made her feel beautiful, cherished, utterly adored. His gaze devoured her, slowly, deliberately, lingering on the curve of her collarbones, the gentle slope of her shoulders, the full swell of her breasts. She felt her nipples harden, aching for his touch. He leaned down, his dark hair falling forward, brushing her skin as he pressed a slow, lingering kiss to the hollow of her throat. His lips were warm, his breath a soft caress. She arched into him, her hands finding purchase in his hair, holding him close. He moved lower, kissing the sensitive skin just above her breast, then tracing a path towards her nipple with his tongue. A gasp tore from her throat, a sound of pure, unadulterated pleasure. When his mouth finally closed over her nipple, suckling gently, a jolt of pure ecstasy shot through her, radiating from her core outwards. She whimpered, her fingers clenching in his hair, pulling him closer. He suckled, teased, nipped gently, driving her wild with desire. Her hips began to move instinctively, seeking friction, seeking release. His hand found its way to her leggings, making quick work of the button and zipper. With a practiced ease, he peeled them down her legs, along with her delicate lace underwear, until she lay completely bare before him. The cool air on her skin was a fleeting sensation, quickly replaced by the heat of his gaze, the warmth of the fire. He shed his own clothes with a swift, confident grace, revealing a body sculpted by hard work and nature. Broad shoulders, a powerful chest, covered in a smattering of dark hair, lean hips and strong thighs. And then his erection, a testament to his own fiery desire, stood proud and ready. He was magnificent, a wild, untamed god of the forest. He lay beside her, drawing her close, skin against skin. The warmth of his body a delicious shock. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her onto her side, facing him. His leg tangled with hers, his knee nudging intimately between her thighs. The sensation was electrifying, a promise of what was to come. He kissed her then, a deep, soul-stirring kiss that spoke of passion and devotion. His hand drifted down her back, tracing the curve of her spine, then lower, over her buttocks, before finally slipping between her thighs. His fingers found her, already wet and aching for him. A soft moan escaped her lips as his fingers began to explore, gently parting her, finding her most sensitive nub. He stroked, circled, teased, bringing her closer and closer to the precipice of pleasure. Her body hummed, a taut string vibrating with exquisite tension. "Kale," she gasped, her voice raw with need. "Please." He pulled back slightly, his eyes burning into hers. "Are you sure, Alara? Are you truly ready to let the whispers guide us fully?" "Yes," she breathed, without a moment's hesitation. "More than ready." With a slow, deliberate movement, he shifted, positioning himself above her. She looked up at him, her heart overflowing with a mixture of awe, desire, and profound love. He was beautiful, strong, and utterly hers in this moment. He lowered himself slowly, giving her time to adjust, to feel the exquisite pressure of his shaft against her entrance. He paused, looking into her eyes, seeking her silent consent one last time. She arched her hips, urging him forward. Then, with a deep groan, he began to push, slowly, inch by agonizing inch, into her. She gasped, a sound of pure sensation as her body stretched and opened to accommodate him. The feeling was immense, overwhelming, utterly perfect. He filled her completely, a profound sense of rightness washing over her. He held still for a moment, allowing their bodies to acclimate, their breaths mingling in the firelit air. Her muscles clenched around him, holding him tight, welcoming him home. "You are incredible," he whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. Then he began to move, a slow, rhythmic thrust that quickly deepened into a powerful, primal rhythm. She met him stroke for stroke, her hips rising to meet his, lost in the escalating pleasure. The whispers were no longer just a sound. They were a feeling, a surge of energy that flowed between them, through them, connecting them to the very heart of the lodge, to the ancient spirits of the forest. Their movements became more frantic, more desperate, as they chased the rising tide of sensation. Her nails dug into his shoulders, her legs wrapped tightly around his waist, pulling him deeper still. Each thrust sent waves of fire through her, building, until she felt herself on the brink. "Kale!" she cried out, her voice breaking as she shattered, waves of pure, unadulterated pleasure washing over her, shaking her to her core. Her body convulsed around him, milking every last drop of sensation. He groaned, a primal roar, his own release coming hard and fast, deep within her. He collapsed onto her, his body heavy and warm, their skin slick with sweat, their breaths ragged. They lay tangled together, the aftershocks of their passion still rippling through them. The fire crackled softly, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The whispers, now a soft, contented hum, seemed to celebrate their union. Ilara felt utterly replete, utterly cherished. utterly love. She had found something profound here, something she hadn't even known she was searching for. Cale shifted, propping himself on an elbow, looking down at her, his eyes soft with tenderness and a deep, abiding satisfaction. He kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her lips, a series of gentle, lingering pecks. The whispers were right, he murmured, his voice husky. You are everything. She smiled, a contented sigh escaping her lips. She traced the line of his jaw, feeling the slight roughness of his stubble. And you, Cale, she whispered back, her voice thick with emotion. You are more than I could have ever dreamed. He pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her, holding her tight against his chest. She rested her head on his shoulder, listening to the steady beat of his heart, feeling the warmth of his skin against hers. Sleep was a distant concept, but peace, deep and profound, settled over her. The night was still young, and the connection between them had only just begun to truly unfurl. The whispers promised more, much more. And Elara, utterly and irrevocably caught in their enchanting spell, was ready to listen. His fingers, warm and calloused, began to trace slow patterns on her back, a gentle inquiry that sent shivers of delight through her. She leaned into the touch, a soft sigh escaping her lips, a sound of pure contentment that vibrated through his chest. He tightened his embrace almost imperceptibly, his chin resting lightly on the crown of her head, the subtle scent of his skin, a clean, masculine blend of pine and something earthy uniquely him, filling her senses. It was intoxicating, a lullaby and an awakening all at once. Elara, he murmured, his voice a low rumble against her ear, soft as the night itself. The way he spoke her name, drawn out and tender, made her feel as though she were the only woman in the world, the only thought in his mind. She tilted her head back slightly, her eyes still heavy with the day's journey and the unfolding emotions, meeting his in the dim ambient light filtering through the window. His gaze was intense, a deep pool of warmth and unspoken desire, yet utterly respectful. It was a look that saw beyond the surface, straight into the heart of her. She hummed, her voice barely a whisper, not wanting to break the delicate spell that had woven itself around them. He didn't speak immediately, his thumb now gently stroking the sensitive skin just beneath her earlobe. The simple touch was a revelation, a spark that ignited a slow, delicious burn deep within her. Her breath hitched, and she felt her pulse quicken, a frantic drum against his fingers. His eyes, dark and knowing, tracked the subtle shift in her expression, a faint smile playing on his lips. "You're beautiful," he finally said, his voice husky, almost a confession. "More beautiful than any sunset, any starlit night." A blush bloomed across Elara's cheeks, a warmth that had nothing to do with the summer night. She wasn't used to such earnest, unadorned praise, especially from a man whose very presence commanded attention. It disarmed her, leaving her feeling exquisitely vulnerable and cherished. She felt a tremor run through him, a mirroring of her own escalating emotions. "And you," she managed, her voice a little shaky. Something else." She couldn't find the words, not really. He was a tempest, and a calm, a mystery, and a solace, all wrapped into one compelling package. He chuckled, a low, rich sound that resonated through her. "Something else, huh? I'll take that." Their eyes locked again, the air between them thick with unspoken longing. The space that had felt so comforting moments ago now felt like a chasm of anticipation, a silent question hanging between them. He slowly, deliberately, lowered his head, his gaze never leaving hers. Elara's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic hummingbird trapped within her chest. She watched, mesmerized, as his lips drew closer, her own parting slightly in unconscious invitation. The first touch was feather-light, a soft brush of his mouth against hers, a whisper of a kiss that promised everything and nothing. It was a test, a gentle exploration. Elara responded instinctively, leaning into him, her fingers curling around the fabric of his shirt, pulling him closer. This time, his lips settled more firmly, a tender pressure that sent a wave of warmth coursing through her. It wasn't a demanding kiss, but a deeply sensual one, a slow unfurling of desire. His mouth was soft, warm, tasting faintly of mint, and something uniquely masculine. He moved with a languid grace, exploring the curve of her lips, teasing, tasting, inviting. Ilara felt herself melt into him, her body softening, yielding. She responded with equal fervor, her lips parting further, her tongue tentatively meeting his. A soft groan escaped him, a primal sound of pleasure that sent a thrill through her. The kiss deepened, becoming more ardent, more consuming. His arms tightened around her, pulling her flush against his hard, warm body, leaving no space between them. She felt the undeniable press of his desire against her hip, a potent reminder of the raw, electric current that sizzled between them. Her hands, as if with a will of their own, slid from his shirt to tangle in the soft hair at the nape of his neck, pulling him even closer, desperate to feel more, taste more. The world outside faded, dissolving into a hazy backdrop. There was only the feel of his lips on hers, the scent of him, the rapid beat of their intertwined heart. His hands, no longer content with her back, began to roam, tracing the delicate curve of her spine, then gliding upwards to cup her jaw, his thumbs stroking the sensitive skin of her cheek. He broke the kiss, just barely, their foreheads resting against each other, their breaths mingling in the quiet room. "Ilara!" he breathed, his voice ragged with emotion, his eyes dark and smoldering. "You take my breath away." Her own breath was coming in short, quick gasps. She couldn't speak, could only gaze up at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of wonder and burgeoning desire. He kissed her again, this time with a fervent intensity that left no doubt about his passion. It was a kiss that spoke volumes, a promise of shared pleasure, a silent vow to explore the depths of this intoxicating connection. His hands moved from her face to her shoulders, then slowly, deliberately, down her arms, sending delicious shivers in their wake. He paused at the hem of her silk robe, his fingers brushing against the bare skin of her forearm. The gesture was a question, a silent request. Ilara nodded, a barely perceptible movement, but it was enough. With exquisite slowness, he untied the sash of her robe, his eyes never leaving hers. The silk whispered open, revealing the delicate lace of her nightgown beneath. He didn't rush, savoring each moment, each unfolding layer. His gaze lingered on the swell of her breasts beneath the sheer fabric, a silent appreciation that made her feel beautiful, desired, utterly feminine. He reached out, his fingers tracing the lace, then the soft curve of her collarbone. "May I?" he asked, his voice a low, gravelly whisper, his eyes seeking her permission, ensuring her comfort and desire matched his own. The deference in his question, even amidst such palpable longing, was incredibly seductive. Ilara's voice was a mere thread of sound. "Yes." He slowly peeled the robe from her shoulders, letting it fall to the floor with a soft rustle, a silken pool around her feet. The cool air of the room kissed her skin, but his gaze, warm and possessive, chased away any chill. She stood before him in her nightgown, feeling both exposed and profoundly protected. He reached for her again, his hands sliding beneath the sheer fabric, settling on her bare skin, the warmth of his palms a shocking, exquisite sensation. He drew her close once more, and this time, there was nothing but silk and cotton between their bodies. The contact was electric, a rush of pure sensation. She could feel the firm press of his body against hers, the warmth radiating from him, the subtle texture of his skin against the fabric of her nightgown. He leaned in, his lips finding the sensitive skin of her neck, trailing a path of fire from her jawline to the hollow of her throat, eliciting a soft moan from her. She arched into him, her hands finding purchase on his shoulders, her fingers gripping the strong muscles beneath his shirt. "You feel incredible," he breathed against her skin, his words a gentle caress. She felt a renewed wave of boldness, a confidence ignited by his adoration. Her fingers, still on his shoulders, began to explore the broad expanse of his back, feeling the tautness of his muscles beneath the soft cotton. A desire to feel his bare skin, to truly connect, surged through her. "And you?" she murmured, her voice husky, her lips brushing against his ear. "Feel like a mystery I long to unravel." He pulled back slightly, his eyes sparkling with amusement and a deeper, more profound emotion. "A mystery, am I?" Ilara smiled, a playful glint in her eyes. "Absolutely. And I'm a very curious woman." Her hands moved to the buttons of his shirt, her fingers fumbling slightly, but determined. He watched her, his expression a mixture of anticipation and pure delight, making no move to help or hinder. Each button she unfastened revealed a glimpse of the strong muscled chest beneath, the fine dusting of hair, the warm tanned skin. When the last button was undone, she pushed the shirt open, revealing him fully. He was magnificent. Broad-shouldered, lean, with a sculptor's definition that hinted at strength and discipline. Her gaze traveled over him, lingering on the expanse of his chest, the flat planes of his stomach, the subtle indentation of his navel. A visceral pull, deep in her core, answered the visual feast. She reached out, her fingers trembling slightly, and pressed her palm flat against his chest. His skin was warm, smooth, and vibrant with life. She felt the steady rhythm of his heart beneath her hand, a powerful, reassuring beat that echoed her own. He sucked in a sharp breath at her touch, his eyes fluttering closed for a moment, savoring the sensation. Then he opened them again, his gaze locking with hers, a silent invitation, a shared understanding. He shrugged out of his shirt, letting it fall to the floor to join her robe, another layer shed, another barrier removed. Now, only the delicate lace of her nightgown separated them. He reached for her again, his hands sliding beneath the sheer fabric, settling on her bare skin, the warmth of his palms a shocking, exquisite sensation. He drew her close once more, and this time, there was nothing but silk and cotton between their bodies. The contact was electric, a rush of pure sensation. She could feel the firm press of his body against hers, the warmth radiating from him, the subtle texture of his skin against the fabric of her nightgown. He leaned in, his lips finding the sensitive skin of her neck, trailing a path of fire upwards towards her ear. "You have no idea how long I've wanted to do this, Ilara," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "To hold you like this. To feel you." His words, honest and raw, sent a fresh wave of desire through her. She gasped, arching her back, her fingers digging into his shoulders as his lips continued their delicious assault, grazing her jaw, her cheek, before finding her mouth once more. This kiss was deeper still, a hungry, urgent exploration that left her breathless and yearning for more. His hands, still beneath her nightgown, began to slowly glide upwards, tracing the curve of her waist, then her ribs, until they cupped her breasts through the delicate lace. A jolt, sweet and sharp, shot through her. She moaned into his mouth, her body swaying against his. His thumbs began to stroke the engorged tips of her breasts, sending ripples of pleasure through her entire being. He broke the kiss, pulling back just enough to gaze down at her, his eyes dark with passion, a question in their depths. Ilara, her own eyes heavy-lidded with desire, nodded. Without a word, he reached for the straps of her nightgown, his fingers deft as he slid them from her shoulders. The lace whispered down her body, pulling at her feet, leaving her gloriously, beautifully bare before him. A soft gasp escaped her lips as the cool air met her skin, but it was quickly replaced by the warmth of his gaze, an appreciative, adoring look that made her feel beautiful, cherished, utterly desired. There was no shame, only a profound sense of rightness, of belonging. He reached out, his hands gently cupping her face, his thumbs stroking her cheekbones. His eyes, dark and intense, held hers. "You are exquisite, Ilara." Her heart swelled with a feeling she couldn't quite name, a mix of adoration, longing, and a deep, burgeoning love. She reached for him, her hands finding the waistband of his trousers. Her touch was tentative at first, then more confident as she felt the hard muscle beneath the fabric. He groaned, a deep, guttural sound, and leaned into her, pressing his forehead against hers. "Easy, beautiful," he whispered, his voice thick with desire. "Let's take our time." His hands left her face, moving to her waist, then slowly, deliberately down her hips, drawing her closer until the tips of her breasts brushed against his warm, hard chest. The sensation was electrifying, a spark that ignited a deep, aching need within her. She felt the undeniable hardness of him pressing against her, a potent promise of the pleasure to come. He kissed her again, a slow, deep, consuming kiss that conveyed all the passion and tenderness he felt. As their lips moved, his hands continued their journey, stroking the curve of her buttocks, gently kneading the soft flesh, drawing her even closer against him. Her body responded instinctively, arching into his touch, pressing herself against his undeniable arousal. With another soft groan, he bent slightly, scooping her into his arms with surprising ease. Elara gasped, wrapping her legs instinctively around his waist, her arms around his neck, holding on tight. He carried her to the bed, laying her gently down on the cool sheets, then following her, his weight settling beside her. He propped himself on an elbow, looking down at her, his eyes tracing every curve, every shadow. The moonlight, now streaming more brightly through the window, cast a silver glow on her skin, making her feel ethereal, otherworldly. He reached out, his fingers tracing the line of her collarbone, then dipping into the hollow of her throat, sending shivers through her. "You're a dream, Elara," he whispered, his voice raw with emotion. "Only if you are too," she responded, her voice trembling slightly. He smiled, a slow, tender smile that reached his eyes. "Then we are dreaming together." He leaned down, his lips finding hers once more. A soft, lingering kiss that deepened with each passing moment. His hand left her throat, traveling down her body, stroking her stomach, then her hip, before moving lower still, teasing the sensitive skin of her inner thigh. Elara gasped, her body arching involuntarily as his touch grew bolder, more intimate. His fingers, warm and knowing, found the heart of her, gently exploring, eliciting soft moans and gasps from her lips. She felt herself opening to him, yielding to the exquisite sensations, her body trembling with a delicious anticipation. He watched her, his eyes dark with desire, deriving as much pleasure from her reactions as from his own touch. "Beautiful," he murmured, his voice thick with passion. "So beautiful." He moved above her, his body pressing gently against hers, the hard length of him a tantalizing promise. His eyes held hers, seeking her permission, ensuring her readiness. Elara, her breath coming in ragged gasps, reached up, her hands cupping his face, pulling him closer. "Please," she whispered, her voice a plea. He smiled, a triumphant, tender smile, and with a slow, deliberate movement, he entered her. A soft gasp escaped Elara's lips, a mixture of pleasure and a fleeting moment of exquisite fullness. He paused, allowing her body to adjust, his eyes never leaving hers, gauging her comfort, her pleasure. "Are you with me, Elara?" he whispered, his voice a low thrum against her ear. "Always," she breathed, her voice filled with emotion, her hips instinctively arching, urging him deeper. He began to move, slowly at first, a gentle rhythm that quickly deepened, becoming more fervent, more demanding. Elara met him stroke for stroke, her body responding with an ancient primal wisdom. Their movements became a dance, a timeless ballet of intertwined bodies, each seeking and finding the other. The bed creaked softly in rhythm with their passion, the only sound in the room apart from their mingled breaths and soft moans. Her hands explored the taut muscles of his back, feeling the strength, the power of him. His lips found hers again, a hungry, consuming kiss that stole her breath and ignited every nerve ending. The world narrowed to this moment, to the exquisite sensations, the shared rhythm, the profound connection that bound them together. The tension built within her, a delicious coil tightening with each thrust, each passionate kiss. She felt herself spiraling higher and higher, closer to the precipice of pure sensation. His movements grew more urgent, his breath coming in ragged gasps, mirroring her own escalating desire. Suddenly, a wave of pure, unadulterated pleasure washed over her, an explosion of sensation that rocked her to her core. Her body convulsed around him, her nails digging gently into his shoulders as she cried out, his name a guttural whisper on her lips. He groaned, a deep, primal sound, and followed her, burying himself deep within her, his body shuddering with his own release. They collapsed onto the bed, limbs intertwined, bodies slick with sweat, breaths coming in ragged gasps. The moonlight still streamed through the window, casting a gentle glow on their entangled forms. Elara rested her head on his chest, listening to the rapid, then slowly calming beat of his heart beneath her ear. His arm tightened around her, pulling her even closer, a possessive, tender embrace. A profound sense of peace, deeper and more potent than before, settled over her. It wasn't just the peace of satiated desire, but the peace of profound connection, of having found a sanctuary, a haven in his arms. The whispers that had promised more had delivered beyond her wildest imaginings. They hadn't just explored physical intimacy, they had touched souls, connected on a level that transcended words. He kissed the top of her head, a soft, tender gesture. "Are you all right, Elara?" he murmured, his voice still hoarse with passion. She sighed, a sound of utter contentment. "More than all right. I don't think I've ever felt like this before." He chuckled, a low rumbling sound that vibrated through her. "Good, because I haven't either." He shifted slightly, pulling the soft duvet over them, tucking her closer against his side. The warmth of his body, the comforting weight of his arm around her, the steady rhythm of his breathing. It was all she needed. They lay in comfortable silence for a long time, simply existing in each other's presence, savoring the afterglow of their shared passion. The world outside, with its demands and complexities, seemed miles away, irrelevant. Here, in the soft glow of the moon, wrapped in his arms, everything felt simple, profound, and utterly right. Eventually, Elara stirred, lifting her head to look at him. His eyes were closed, his expression peaceful, a faint smile playing on his lips. She reached out, her fingers gently tracing the line of his jaw, the subtle stubble, the curve of his mouth. He stirred at her touch, his eyes fluttering open, a soft, sleepy smile gracing his lips as he met her gaze. "Still dreaming," she whispered, a playful glint in her eyes. He pulled her closer, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. "Never felt more awake." His eyes held hers, a deep, loving gaze that spoke volumes. "Elara, what is this?" he asked. His voice, soft, almost vulnerable. She thought for a moment, letting the myriad emotions swirl within her. "It's a beginning," she finally said, her voice filled with conviction. "It feels like coming home." He tightened his embrace, pulling her even closer, as if to physically absorb her words. "Coming home," he repeated, a thoughtful, tender note in his voice. I like that very much." The night was indeed still young, but the connection between them had unfurled into something vast and beautiful, a tapestry woven with threads of desire, vulnerability, and profound affection. The whispers had blossomed into a symphony, a declaration of a bond forged in the crucible of shared intimacy and raw, undeniable emotion. Elara, utterly and irrevocably caught, was no longer just listening. She was living it, every breathtaking moment, every tender touch, every whispered word. And as she drifted toward sleep in the secure warmth of his embrace, a peaceful smile on her lips, she knew, with absolute certainty, that this was just the beginning of their shared story, a story she was now ready to write, hand in hand with him, under the watchful, approving gaze of the moon. Their journey had just begun, and the promise of endless mornings and starlit nights, entwined and deeply connected, stretched out before them, an inviting, thrilling expanse.